Do you have some unconscious patterns that keep repeating? And are you becoming more and more aware that there might be such a thing? And often these unconscious patterns are actually hidden in our beliefs, hidden in our assumptions, and they just keep repeating, of course, until you bring some conscious awareness to them so that they can change. And some of the conscious patterns that we have that are hidden are in the little things of every day, of when we're either complaining or we're blaming or we're judging and or being self-critical. So all of these areas are where our unconscious patterns are. And until we bring conscious awareness to it or bring it out to the light, then we just keep repeating them, right? Until something happens in our life that is quite dramatic and we realize that there are some unconscious patterns happening, and it's all happening within the conditioning of who you are. And the reason why it is really important to uncover these is because our reality is always being created by our present state. And also it's being created by our past present state, of the past week, of the past month. Our state is always creating our reality. So if you're not being aware of where you're going unconscious and where these patterns are, then you can keep looping in the same circumstances of life. And if you're wanting to start to change some of your circumstances of life or your experience of life, then it's important to start to understand, where am I holding negative patterns? And where am I holding negative patterns that are actually quite unconscious? Like, I'm not realizing them as they're happening. I might realize them later, but while it's happening, it's very difficult. And when I work with clients, this is why I always express how important it is to have some sort of personal practice, and a personal practice of meditation, maybe of yoga, maybe of mindful walking, anything that keeps you in the present moment. But meditation is one of the most important, because when we can cut out the noise and the distraction of life and we are just quiet within, then we can see what's arising. And also with that practice, we get better at noticing what's coming up moment to moment. And that is really the only way you're going to notice what's happening and notice that you're in an unconscious pattern that you just didn't realize. And I find most people are going to be doing this all the time until you start realizing that every thought, every word, and every action is always creating your reality. You then really want to become very conscious and aware of every thought, word, and action that comes through you, because you realize this is creating your present day reality. So one of the reasons why it's first going to be hard to change is because it goes unnoticed, right? And we just kind of, we're on autopilot in our day, and everything is kind of going unnoticed because, of course, we're quite busy in our modern lifestyles. So I would say step one is to have a personal practice, so a meditation practice, and you can start very small, with 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and developing that to be a bit longer so that you can settle down this body and this vessel that can't even sit still. So it's important to start that practice and then to start to notice, so that when you're in the thick of your everyday life, as you're responding or reacting to life, you're starting to see, oh, here's an unconscious pattern that I go into, whether it's complaining or blaming, or other behaviors that we have that are really, that go unnoticed, and they're really coming from our wounded self, that small self that doesn't feel good enough, that doesn't feel adequate, and then it starts to respond in these conditioned ways. So I'm just looking at my notes. I think it's really important to, one, as I said, have that meditation practice. Two, coming into the present moment is always important. because we need to be in the present moment to just notice what's coming up and to connect with our breath. And then to notice, okay, I responded in this way, or I reacted in this way to that thing. So I'm noticing it, and then I'm going to make like a mental picture, a mental note, or you can write it down. Next time this happens, I'm going to choose to respond this way. Right? So that's one way of changing an unconscious pattern is, one, you have to notice it. And then two, you're making that choice of how next time you're going to respond differently to that situation or to that circumstance, or you're going to behave differently. You're recognizing, I don't want to behave this way anymore. I don't want to speak negatively of myself, even if it's a small little thing. You know, we can say things like, oh my goodness, I'm so dumb that I did that thing. You know, so I could be like, oh, wow, why did I say that about myself? I don't really want to talk about myself that way. So next time that something like that comes up, if I'm staying present, I'm going to just choose, before those words come out of my mouth, to say it differently, or to respond differently, to respond with kindness instead. And I think the other important part during this process of kind of catching yourself in the unconscious states or the unconscious patterns and finding what those patterns are that you go unconscious in, is there's two things here I wrote down, which is to embrace definitely radical forgiveness, because you're never going to get it perfect, right? We're always going to just kind of trip up on things, and our lives and our world are always presenting with us different circumstances and different energetics and different people that will bring up different aspects of something. So it's okay that you will, get it. You won't get it perfect, because we're not aiming to get it perfect, but we're aiming to just keep noticing, right? And keep noticing and keep refining and keep choosing again. So it's really important to have that radical forgiveness for the self. So never to be hard on yourself for however you are responding. And to understand that we actually really heal through compassion. So compassion for ourselves and where we are at that moment. And that we will always choose again. We can always have the opportunity to choose again. And I think the other really important thing is surrender. So we need to surrender this illusion of controlling everything. And that's a hard one to give up, because we have absolutely been conditioned and taught that we need to control all circumstances in order for life to go the way we want it to be. So we don't want to force, and instead we actually want to lean on faith. So that would be the best thing to do, right? Is to release that resistance, to let go of trying to force things to happen, to control things to happen. But can I lean a bit more on faith and trusting that as I have this conscious awareness of how I now want to be, that I have the faith that things will work out, that I will be able to, how many times it takes, I will be able to let go of this pattern and choose a new way of being. And in that, there's less of this gripping that happens towards healing or forcing things, because the truth is that everything is perfect as it is right now. Even when it's uncomfortable, it is perfect, because it's exactly where you need to be now to where you need to be going. So everything is exactly as it needs to be in this moment. And so once we can come to that acceptance of that and just breathe into every moment, and remembering that really all you need to do all the time is just stay present with what is happening, with what is, and remembering that I can choose again. I can choose again in the next now moment. And through that process of remembering that I get to choose again, remembering to be compassionate with yourself, remembering to have forgiveness for the self, then this process actually just gets easier and easier, and it feels less of a task, because I think at first it feels like a thing to do, to work on myself. It feels like this task, and I can speak from experience that eventually it doesn't feel that way. Eventually you just realize it's just presence that's taking you where you need to go, and you don't need to force anything. And you'll never get it perfect. I don't get it perfect, right? But I catch myself much faster now than I ever have. I don't have to stay in any negative loops for a very long time. They're very short windows now, very, very short. Like, it's almost like it doesn't exist because it's so short. And I'm always reminding myself that I get to choose again in the next now moment, right? I can dust myself off and steer my ship of where I want it to be instead. And that's just the process that we're awakening to, is realizing that, and we can let go of gripping. And I think I'll make another video about one of the mantras, I guess I'll call it a mantra, that I've been working with for a number of months now, that has really, really been a game changer for me, in changing my resistance to life, because I think that that's something that we're always doing, also unconsciously, is we're resisting everything that's happening in the now moment. So I'll leave that for another video. But for now, I hope this was helpful, and just stay present, noticing the unconscious patterns, allowing them to be there, and remembering that you get to choose again. And you get to choose again with presence and with your heart, and being here, and knowing that you don't have to get this perfect. You just have to get to choose again and feel more of that peace within your body. Thank you for being here.